some security veterans, right? So, by the way, hi everybody, Jason, Jeff, Michael.
Hey.
Backstage, we were just talking right before we went on live that that none of us and none of you guys really knew in the past, that your SEGs were missing a lot of attacks, and until there was a way to measure that. So that's the data we're going to go over. I'm going to show that briefly in terms of what we found and talk about the study. And then I really want you guys to take over and share some of your insights and share your story and provide some tips and for the attendees on the call. This is the panel we put together. We have Jason, Jeff, Michael. 30 seconds real quick. Jason, Jeff, Michael, can you all just kind of tell people what type of company you work at and the size of your team, the size of the company?
Sure, I can start. Jason Phillips, Director of Cybersecurity for Sensient Technologies. We're about 4,000 users globally. We are a manufacturing company that specializes in flavors and colors.
Flavors and colors. Okay, now we're going to have to talk about that. Okay, I'm going to get a chance. All right. Jeff.
Yeah, my name's Jeff Rader, sysadmin at Hoosier Energy. We're electric utility covering the southern half of Indiana, and we have about 500 employees. Our security team is about 7 people, so but smaller company.
It's a larger security team than a lot of companies I talk to, even companies with thousands of employees. So, us vendors on a regular basis, we talk about SOC teams, IT security teams, and but when I talk to IT security leaders on a regular basis, and very often it's you might have a company with hundreds or thousands of employees, and they have an IT security team of 3 or 5 or 7. So I think that's more of a reality these days. Michael.
Hello, my name is Michael Kowalski. I'm a Microsoft 365 engineer here at SMC. Overall, SMC has about 17,000 users, and I'm focusing here on North America region. But yeah, we have about a team of, well, off and on, depending different responsibilities. We have about a dozen people doing a lot of it, security parts.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So what we're talking about is a new research that we did earlier this year that I was really had a lot of fun working on, and it's the hidden gaps in SEG protection. And so I just want to provide a quick background on the data. This is not a vendor pitch. I'm not going to sell you on IRONSCALES. You guys know we are IRONSCALES. We're hosting this, and but right now I just want to talk about the data and get insights from from my panel here. So before I jump into the data, quick question for you guys. Each of y'all, feel free to speak in. What industry buzzword makes you guys hit the delete button the fastest? And you can tell me another one that's not on the list. I just put some up there for fun. Jeff, I'll call on you first.
AI.
That was my answer too, man. Seriously.
That's okay. You can say AI in general. I know we're an AI company, but for sure, that makes sense. I mean,
yeah, but you did AI before it became the buzzword recently, so
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's. I mean, I was at RSA and this year, and every vendor there was talking about using. Everybody had AI one way or another, and
next gen was on there too. Yeah, no, we still use that word. That's actually still valid for us, but.
Next gen's been around. It comes and goes on a regular basis, for sure. For a lot of years, we have to deal with everything with the cloud. Now it's taken for granted. I kind of view AI as the same thing. For somebody to say, "Hey, we're using AI," it's like, okay, that's like trying to impress me to saying that we're in the cloud. Of course you are. Everybody's doing it. But boy, last year, this most recent year, compared to the last couple of years of RSA, there wasn't a single company that wasn't talking about AI. And my joke when I came back was that even the concession vendor out in the hallway had AI above their concessions, So, but it's fun talk, because a lot of us are, I know we're a vendor, we do AI, and yeah, we've been doing it for almost 10 years. So, and a lot of customers that I've talked to or prospective customers will actually ask that, whose AI are you guys using? I have to clarify, no, we built this ourselves. And that's something you want to look for whenever you're talking to, any security vendors, is how long have they been using AI and doing AI? Is it their own AI? A little trick that I do, and I tell some, friends and in the industry that go to the Wayback Machine and look at their website 3 or 4 years ago, see how much AI they were talking about at that point in time. That's a good way to tell. So can you see this next slide here, the research?
Yep.
Okay, so obviously everybody on this call right here understands, how SEGs work. But just to clarify for a baseline here, SEGs sit in line, either on-prem in the old school days. Nowadays, almost everybody's using a cloud version of the SEG. Basically, what you're doing is you're redirecting through SMTP all of your email to a SEG first. And then the mail goes from there to Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace, and then the inboxes. So these are the gold standard for email security for a long time. They've been around for over 2 decades. And they have some good uses still to this day, but email security is not really one of them, as we're going to see. And some of the challenges they have is that they're very rule based and policy based, and they require a lot of feeding and watering, as I like to say. And every now and then they introduce issues in terms of latency and availability. If they go down, all your mail goes down, and if they're gone for quite a while, that means some of that mail just gets dropped on the floor. But we talk about integrated cloud email security. ICAS is kind of the term that Gartner uses to talk about vendors like IRONSCALES that are API based. And the difference there is, instead of you having to redirect your email, we plug in through an API. So we are directly integrated in the inbox. So it's about as simple as turning on as an app on a phone, and you can turn it on and off just as easily. And an approach like ours, as soon as you turn it on, it just starts discovering, it starts learning automatically. And then it starts to continuously use AI and machine learning to be able to create baselines for every employee and every mailbox to figure out what their normal style and cadence of writing emails are, and who they talk to on a regular basis, so that we can detect what's not. And you don't have any challenges of mail getting delayed or not getting delivered, because we're not in line. So these 2 slides are something that I show prospects and on a regular basis, and all of a sudden it dawned on me this year that wait a second, if we sit at the inbox level, there's something we can do here, because our tagline at our company is we catch the fish others miss, which is a great tagline. I'm really proud of it. I love it. But a lot of companies have catchy taglines. But I realized all of a sudden I can actually prove it, right? Because of where we sit, we can actually measure exactly how many email attacks a SEG is missing. So that's exactly what we did. So we ran a DNS script to find out which of our 16,000 customers are still using a SEG. And some of them still use a SEG because either it's integrated with a bunch of other offerings from that vendor, or they still have a contract, or they're trying to follow a typical defense in depth approach. So there was a couple thousand of our customers that are still using one of these 4 SEGs that are on the list right here. So what I did is I analyzed 30 days worth of data, and we were able to count exactly how many email attacks they missed. So at the end of the day, when we average it out across all the vendors, across all company sizes, for every 100 mailboxes, we caught 67.5 email attacks that they missed. So, if you have 1,000 employees, then that's just under 700 email attacks that they're missing. If you think about it, that means the email was missed by the SEG and missed by Microsoft or Google Workspace. So we're not talking about old school early 2000 type PayPal phishing attacks. We're talking about stuff that was fairly advanced. Some of the ones that I looked into were not even that advanced, actually. A lot of them were, but some of them were pretty basic. So it really surprised me the type of stuff they were missing. The top 2 types of threats that they all missed on average the most, some were different order, but vendor scam and credential theft. So true or false question for you guys. Most security teams know how many phishing emails their SEG is missing each month. Michael, do you agree with that?
Yeah, since we're using IRONSCALES, we of course know how many are being missed, but I think most companies that don't use it wouldn't know.
How would you guys know? I mean, I know all of you guys are using IRONSCALES now, but before then, how would you know how well your SEG is doing, or how many phishing attacks are missing? What would you use as an indicator?
We have one guy that clicks on everything, so we just. I wish I was joking.
I was gonna say there's always that compromiser in the company that'll
Yeah.
choose to enter their credentials or click on something for sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Jason, I think you were telling me, or forget Jason or Jeff, both begin with a J, that typically what you were hoping for, relying on, was somebody who is a pretty sharp eye, doesn't report everything. So you're just looking for that one employee to escalate something to you guys through a ticket or some other means. And then you would investigate that to determine if it was an attack, right? I'm not sure which one of you told me that, but feel free to chime in.
Yeah, that's us.
So let's play that out for a second. Let's say that one of your more reliable employees sends you guys an email message that you think is a phishing email. What goes through your head, and what do you and your team do next?
Just analyze it. I mean, get a look at it, and have some tools, sandbox it and stuff, and see where it's going. If it's bad, then you have to pull it through Microsoft.
Say more about that. Pull it through Microsoft.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, what does that? I mean, what do the steps look like, or what's required to make that happen?
They keep moving where you have to do it, but it's a compliance search. You have to run a search. It takes, I don't know, 10 minutes or something, and then you run a hard delete and get rid of it. It takes about 15, 20 minutes.
So what you're saying there is, one of those comes in, you confirm this is a phishing email. Now you have to run a search in Microsoft to go see if there's more of those in the company.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Yep. Yeah.
So do you guys also, when that happens, do you do anything else as part of your threat hunting or your incident response? I mean, do you go and look at logs to because what pops in my head is, okay, I have this person who's really sharp who reported it. I also know this other, I know Bill in sales, he clicks on everything. I need to go see if he clicked on it. So
Right.
Do you guys do that every time to find out, does somebody click on it? What else do you do before you close that ticket?
Well, usually the guys will go through Splunk logs and see if there was any other indications that it got anybody else, any bad traffic or anything. So it takes hours. I mean, sometimes when one gets through.
So to my other
It's a
panelists,
painful process. Yeah, it's a painful process. And I think, again, to echo what Jeff said, it's really one of those things you're looking for that. What did the user do with it, right? Did they click on it? Did they interact with it? What was the nature of the message? We can look through our web gateway to see if there was any external communications to whatever the malicious content was. So there's a path. Very painful to understand that in the past, right? And Jeff's describing a rough process, and a lot of the Microsoft tools. Microsoft gives you a lot of data, but it's really hard to get to in some ways, and it really takes time, which in those cases you don't always have, right? If somebody interacted with something and if it's malicious or spreading quickly, time is not your friend. You've got to be able to act quickly and be able to pull that message. And we've seen, I think, again, in IRONSCALES, we've been able to remediate things very quickly, where you can pull that message from a mailbox, whoever received it, right? In a matter of seconds. It doesn't take very long at all. And you can mark that as phishing and quarantine it and never allow it again. So
right.
It's that huge time saver, and that little breath of, that sigh of relief a little bit, where that message is being yanked as quickly as possible. So.
Right. Yeah. So the way our approach, the way we take this is by using, we have a virtual SOC agent called Themis, and so most of the time, 99% of the time, Themis is going to catch these, and then if she sees one of these in the inbox, she's automatically going to go look for the same message or similar messages. And a lot of times, to you and I, they would look very different, but she's able to tell they're all part of the same campaign, and immediately cluster them and pull them out of the inbox. And then immediately going forward, if they see any other variants of that coming in, remove those. Another benefit here, at least with our approach, is that we federate that, meaning we have a kind of a crowdsourced approach. So let's say one of your sharp buys detects something that's just nobody's ever seen before, and Themis is not 100% sure about it. So she's 75% confident it's a phishing. So it's escalated, brought up to one of you guys to look at, and you guys confirmed, yes, this is a phish. Not only does she cluster everything in your environment, like I explained also, but the machine learning models are updated for all 16,000 customers. So that one employee, that one sharp employee at your company is able to help thousands of other companies and IT security leaders. So the point there is to be able to quickly adapt to the new types of threats that are coming in and update the machine learning in real time, versus having to go fill out add a new rule or policy to a SEG, or with another vendor, maybe you have to forward that to them or create a ticket to say, hey, this looks like one that was missed. Can you guys update, our policies or update the machine learning? So I think it's people underestimate. I know we're just talking about email, but email is still year after year, according to Verizon, one of the top three, leading ways that breaches happen. So it's still really important, but it's also, you don't want to have to spend a lot of time doing what you guys were just talking about. Okay. So out of the 4 vendors, here it is by the numbers, and this is rolled up across all customer sizes. And I have in the report that you guys can download, somebody on my team will share a link on where you can get the report. But in the report, we break it down by vendor and by company sizes, but this is rolled up. So for instance, Barracuda, across all their customer sizes, every month they're missing 101 email attacks. So for all of you guys, which one of these is most surprising to you? And then which one's least surprising to you?
It's kind of funny, right? I read this and I made a list of all of the email gateways that I've seen used in the past, and the list is exhaustive, and I'm sure it is for you guys as well. And it's all of these and more that are on the screen. I don't know that I'm surprised by much of it, based on the fact that they're all rules based and that they're heavy configurations. That it's complex, right? There's a level of complexity that goes into this that I think oftentimes these responsibilities are added to somebody else's plate, right? It's very rare that you have a 100% dedicated email security gateway person. So you have someone that's doing the best they can to understand the rules and the messages that are coming in, but it's very challenging when you're talking hundreds of thousands or millions of messages per month. What are you looking for? It's like saying that you have Splunk. Jeff, you mentioned Splunk before, and it's like you wouldn't have any automated rules to bubble things to the top. It's like, well, I'll just go look through Splunk, and it's like, that's not possible, right? That's a human impossibility, which is where you start to rely on other tools to be able to interpret these things, which we're very grateful for. But yeah, I mean, it's those two categories. Audie and you and I talked, and I think those two categories are just they kind of flew out of my mouth as far as vendor scam and credential theft. I didn't even have to think about it as far as the number of or the percentage of messages that were top of the list that are threats. So that's kind of my perspective on it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, definitely agree with that too. I mean, the third one, business email compromise, is definitely the one that pops up to second sometimes in what we see. But yeah, totally agree, especially with the vendors too. I have experience with 2 of them, and kind of seen the same things.
Yeah, we've had issues with when we had Proofpoint, that we would have some of our companies that we worked with closely that we had whitelisted. And so then one of them would get hit and start sending stuff out, and it'd walk right in. So it's nice to not have that anymore. When people say, I need this whitelisted, I say, no, we don't do that.
Right. We'll evaluate the threat when it comes, because we know it is coming at some point, and we're not just letting everything through the front door. You're right.
Yep.
So vendor scam and credential theft were the top 2 across the board. Very close behind that is business email compromise. And really, a lot of times, a lot of BEC attacks are also vendor scams or credential thefts.
Right.
So the biggest difference there is a BEC email typically doesn't have a link or attachment in there. So instead of having a malicious content, they have malicious intent. So they're trying to convince somebody, hey, we're one of your vendors. We've changed banks. Here's a new routing number, right? So that's a combination BEC attack and vendor scam because they're trying to pretend they're a vendor. Or they are the same thing, they're trying to do the same thing for credentials, right? They're pretending to be a vendor and working out with one particular employee saying, hey, we've updated our change, reset your password on our portal. We need you to go re-authenticate with your MFA, for instance. So really the common thread there has to do with the fact that the more advanced ones that are hard to detect, that are most pernicious, that do the most damage, are the ones that actually don't have a link or an attachment. More often they have a set of instructions, a call to action. CTA is kind of a marketing term, but attackers are marketers. They're sales and marketer people. They're really good at this stuff, and they know how to manipulate and social engineer their target victims for sure. So I wasn't totally surprised when I saw this with Barracuda, just because it's typically used by small organizations and it's not typically historically viewed as like a dedicated, leading SEG, right? But they're used on a regular basis for sure. I think I have another stat here. I'll show this when we break it out by company size, but I got another question for you guys. True or false? Start with you, Michael. Defense in depth is just expensive compensation for weak tools. So, kind of a loaded question there. But why do you think when people talk about defense in depth, what are they really talking about? Is it just them saying, an excuse to add another tool and not have to explain why the one they bought 2 years ago isn't good enough? Or what's the purpose of this? Is it a real thing that people still need to do?
Well, I'm actually not totally familiar with the term, but you do have to look at the tools that you use and have used in the past and make sure that you get money's worth out of it. And if it's not really helping you the way you thought it would, look for something that works better. Sure.
Yeah, defense in depth. We're talking about people who use 2 or more tools in the same category. So an example here would be, I'm going to use a SEG and Microsoft and IRONSCALES to really tighten up and catch as many fish as I have as possible. And Jeff, I think you're the one who, when I asked you, is that approach you would go if you had a blank check? And you said, well, maybe. And then you said, but now I have, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you said something like, now I have 3 places to go find something if it's missing. Right. Can you tell me what you mean by that?
Well, it's just where it got caught. When someone tells you they didn't get something, then I've got to search 3 or more places to see which tool caught it, and that's irritating. Obviously, it'd be nice to not have to do that, just go one place. So defense in depth is good. Yeah, I mean, network wise we do that, but maybe with email we're just using Microsoft and IRONSCALES right now.
For you guys, do you change your settings? What extent are you using the built-in tools in Microsoft for email security? Are you maximizing those and use IRONSCALES, or do you turn those down and turn them off and just try to work in IRONSCALES? I mean, what would you recommend if you had somebody say, hey, I followed your advice, I went ahead and bought some IRONSCALES to help deal with my email. What should I do now in my Microsoft settings? What do y'all recommend to the people who are listening in here?
Yeah, we kept the recommended settings in the walkthrough when we set up IRONSCALES, and we kind of knew, I think instinctively and visibly, that Microsoft wasn't catching everything, but we didn't want to lock it down and limit what IRONSCALES was capable of doing, right? So there's a balance, right? We took the recommended settings, but now we've dialed things up in IRONSCALES to make sense of what makes sense for our environment. So I think, and again, to go back to the defense in depth, I think Audie, and you asked me what we replaced we're on IRONSCALES and Microsoft as well, and we took the SEG out of the loop. We took the Symantec cloud security gateway or whatever it was out of the loop, it was a cost measure, and it was also just an effectiveness measure. But yeah, I mean, I think it's really having that in IRONSCALES to be able to manage effectively the messages that are quarantined, people are asking to be reviewed, has dramatically reduced our troubleshooting time and our time in the tool. I mean, we don't spend as much time searching for messages as we had in Microsoft. You know, why did it get blocked? And there's still things that get caught, but it's become so much more effective. And I don't think I answered your question when we started the call. We only have a team of 4 people, so we're managing all of our technologies within the security group with 3 full-time engineers plus myself that's hands-on as well. So it's just that efficiency, right? It's like Jeff said, I don't want to go looking in 3 places for where did it go, or where isn't it?
Right. So you'll find where it is, and then you have to release it, and then hopefully when you release it, one of the other tools don't catch it, so you're having to do the opposite of whack-a-mole. You're trying to really release it.
Right.
Michael, I think you originally, as I recall from the story there, you're telling me the background there, you guys were using, actually, I think you guys were still, before you went to Microsoft, you were using Domino on-prem, correct?
Yeah, we used Domino on-prem, and we had Proofpoint back then. And when we switched to Microsoft, we kept Proofpoint. We dialed pretty much everything down in Microsoft because we didn't want 2 places to have things going. And then things didn't go so good in the first year, and we were introduced to IRONSCALES, which really, I was a little hesitant at first because I didn't want another tool in the mix. And then it was very, very convincing early on how easy it is to use and implement and everything. So we still have Proofpoint, kind of more of a company-wide decision for different companies in different countries to still keep it going for right now. But yeah, I'm kind of would be very interested in seeing how much time we can save with just going with IRONSCALES and doing the minimum we need to do with rules in Microsoft.
Didn't you tried, I think before you made the decision to add IRONSCALES, I think you tried to tried some of the premium offerings from Microsoft and tried to get it, try to make Microsoft do all the work. Is that correct?
We briefly looked at it. That was 2019, so we weren't quite comfortable. I think they're definitely a little better now than they used to be.
Yeah.
We looked at the Proofpoint options for phishing, reporting, and all that stuff, and that wasn't very convincing back then. I hope they improved since then, but yeah, it was so much easier to do everything in IRONSCALES. So definitely, that's our reporting tool for phishing for users.
Great, thank you. All right. So I talked about a breakdown by size, and we have this average number across all the company sizes, across all 4 SEGs of 67.5 email attacks missed per 100 mailboxes. But if I break it out by organization size, we see a much different picture. So you see here, each of the blue candles represent the 4 different SEGs. And then you see the groupings like company size or mailbox size 1 to 99, 100 to 250. So Jason, what stands out to you when you saw this in the report? Did anything on this section make you go, or?
Yeah, there was a metric about some of the larger deployed mailboxes. I think the smaller ones, I think I can understand. But I guess that was my question. We never talked about it, Audion. I'm trying to figure out what would we attribute that to? Like some of the larger some of the larger deployments, right?
Yeah. So when I saw this,
Yeah.
as I was, nerding out on the numbers, I figured I did something wrong, right? So I went back to it several times, and then I just zeroed in on a few sample customers, and just to make sure that we had the numbers correct, and we are. I was surprised. I thought it'd almost be the other way around. I'd flip this around. The larger you are, the candle's going to go higher. Why would I see something on the order of 250 to 700 attacks missed for a company that has fewer than 100 mailboxes? And so I did a couple spot checks and interviewed a couple of these customers and found out that That's because they haven't logged in and updated any rules or policies on their SEG in a long time. And so my theory here, and I'd be interested to see if you guys agree, is that everybody knows that SEGs require more regular maintenance. You have to add new rules, allow list, block list, policies, exceptions. That requires more time, and depending on the SEG, it requires a little more skill. So my theory is that the smaller organizations just don't have the time or the human resources in their team to be able to really regularly feed and water the SEGs. Whereas the large organizations have larger teams, they probably have somebody who's got more training and more experience, and that's the best explanation I have for this chart.
Yeah, plus maybe on top, a lot of the smaller companies maybe have third parties that provide the email security for them,
Right.
but maybe the third parties, I mean, there are very good third parties out there. We have a couple that we use, but there are some that might not even pay much attention to updating and helping their customers with the newest versions and all of that stuff. I think we've seen it a lot with Barracuda and some other ones.
Right. Jason,
Yeah,
Jeff, you have any theories?
Yeah, that was what jumped out with the large enterprise anomaly piece of the report. It was that I think I was surprised that organizations of that size would be using some of the, I don't want to use the word inferior, but some of the lesser, I mean, production wise, I wouldn't put a Barracuda in a 10,000 user environment. It just, you wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So it seems like product choice might have been a contributing factor. So.
And potentially, you're talking about the people who are good at catching things. I mean, if you have a larger company, instead of having one or two of those people, maybe you've got 10 or 15. So, that's more in it. If it hits a distribution list or whatever, you just hope one of those people's in there, I guess.
Yeah.
That's a good point, actually, that, you're just a handful of more sharp eyes are going to be able to help bring the numbers down if you're responsive, right? Okay, so what, in your opinion, what triggers most security leaders to finally decide to start look for something better for email security? Go around the horn here, start with you, Jeff. One or more of these or something that's not on the list, what led you to decide, okay, there's got to be a better way and go look for something different?
Yeah, definitely A. I mean, for sure. We had a couple kind of nasty ones in a row, and we were doing lessons learned, and I mean, the lesson learned was what we have isn't really doing the job, so we need something else. And yeah, VIPs obviously they don't want anything to change, but a year later, nobody's really complaining. It was a little bumpy right at the start, but
yeah,
it's good now.
What about the rest of you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think all of those. I mean, certainly a breach of an inadequate tool would definitely raise eyebrows. I mean, if that was the vector of attack, you'd be very concerned that you don't have the right platform in place to detect those types of things. Executives certainly, where's my email? Where did it go? We found with IRONSCALES that it's a lot more self-serve. They get, they can release things. It's a lot easier to work with. If it's in quarantine, we can explain to them why, and we can have a better discussion around it. And I think you really talk about complexity. I think the one thing would be missing on here is complexity of configuration. That's a challenge, right? Like I said, with small teams and people wearing multiple hats, we don't want to be burdened with, a weekly task of have you reviewed all of the email security rules and are they still valid? It doesn't work like that. I think there's certainly an ease of use, but everything contributes to all of these things, right? You want a platform that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like the other said, A and B, the main ones for sure. Burnout from email tickets. I mean, the leaders don't really care much how many tickets there are for the users, for the IT people to do. Maybe users sending in email tickets complaining about stuff that they aren't sure that is phishing might be contributing to finding something else. But yeah, the ease of use definitely of IRONSCALES is such a good point. Plus, after how many years now? 6 years with IRONSCALES, it's still one of my favorite top 3 IT companies I've ever worked with. People in the support and sales and customer service are just amazing.
Nice to hear. Good. Thank you for saying that. Yep. So when I saw like for VIP complaint, I guess another way to put that is what I hear from new customers is that, of course, they maybe have somebody who clicks on a fish. That's a pain because they have to spend a lot of time chasing that down and see if anybody else did the same thing. But they start to, more of the executives are starting to, them and their direct reports are seeing a lot more spoofed emails. So a common one would be an executive come in and why do I keep getting emails pretending to be me in my inbox? And they're worried, like, if I'm getting that or my employees getting that as well, why can't you do something about this? So that's actually probably, our number 1 or number 2 reason when we ask new customers why you started looking for something new. The burnout from email tickets, another way to look at that is it just basically at some point in time, somebody did an annual review or whatever, and they just did an audit and they realized, we're spending 3 or 4 times as much time on email than we were a couple of years ago. And that's something that happens slowly. So it's not, again, I think, Michael, I think you said it, that's a you problem, not everybody else's problem. It's like, good, that's your job, but you still have to manage a number of people and you only have so much time. And if you start to see one of the slices in your stack requiring more feeding and watering than others, then that's a reason for, people to say, okay, I'm going to look and see if there's something that does a little bit better. So, and then I do think also, some of you guys just like, you miss talking to vendors and, talking to salespeople. I know my people, I know IT security people, and they love small talk, right? So.
In all of our free time, right? Yes.
In all of your free time. So this is kind of I expanded the list of stuff. And again, this is a screenshot from the report, but we break down the type of attack. And again, across the board, vendor scam, credential theft. You see business email compromise as a percentage of all the attacks, they're not as high. And that could be a little misleading. That's still the most concerning because those are the ones that often do the most damage. They're the ones that are harder for employees to catch. They don't get caught by a lot of other technologies in the flow because they're very reliant on link and attachment scanning or keyword rule matching. So, but the breakout here is pretty interesting. And I see what I also noticed is the last time I checked the data, I started to see an increase. It's a trend of the QR code and image-based attacks. So I group those together because really a QR code attack is a version or a variant of an image-based attack. When I say image-based attacks, the ones I'm seeing more of lately, the most popular one are DocuSigns, where the whole email body will look like a typical DocuSign email that somebody gets, but it's just a screenshot of it. And they do that because then it's harder for their word matching and rule matching to catch it because it's just an image and it requires them to do some OCR and then unpack that and make sure it's a clean OCR. And then they're going to do an analysis based on that. And that really reduces impacts accuracy. So kind of curious, when's the last time you guys saw a QR code or image-based attack, or do you guys have those in your companies or your industry?
Yeah, definitely saw some last month.
Yeah.
Image-based ones are more common currently, but yes.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right. So, because I've asked you guys, if you had a blank check, would you still keep using? Some of you guys are still using a SEG, or of other past you've used it, combination of SEG and Microsoft SEGs. If you were forced to keep a SEG, what's the one feature of a SEG that would make you feel like, okay, take the medicine a little bit easier? Say, okay, I guess I can justify it for that one feature. So I don't want to just, just trash talk SEGs overall. They do more than just, scan emails, right? But for your particular organizations, is there one feature that would justify it?
I would say how fast it can pull things once they're identified. Because as somebody said, speed is key when you don't want your people to start, being compromised and sending out the bad stuff. So the quicker you can get it out, the better. So
I've asked other
Yeah,
people about this, and they'll talk about maybe like archiving, for instance, which I don't hear that as often now, and I think it's just because people like Microsoft they have archiving now as well, right? So
right. I think it's an interesting question, and I think in this day and age, email filtering, it's a requirement, right? You're going to need it. It's that when you show raw numbers of how many things are getting blocked, even if you consider Microsoft a SEG, right, in their platform, they're still blocking a ton of stuff. It's just they're missing a ton of stuff as well, and you can't rely upon them to do it all, right? And that's the Microsoft model. We all understand it. They leave room for other vendors, which is outstanding, which is why we're here today, which is great.
Right.
But I think it's that it goes back to the defense in depth, right?
And there's a balance there, right? The defense in depth versus having 3 places to go find something, right?
You can show them raw numbers of how much stuff gets blocked in IRONSCALES that gets missed by Microsoft. So there's your cost justification right there.
For sure. So if any of you any of the viewers here are wondering how your SEG might be doing, you can go to our website, and we have a calculator that we built where you can pull a drop down for how many mailboxes you manage and what SEG you're using or thinking about using, and you can see the data for yourself for your company your size. And then on that same page, you can get a link to the full report, and also we're sharing a link here in this webinar. So this is good stuff. I really appreciate the insight and the war stories from all three. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. Good discussion.
Thanks. Bye.